Hi guys, so this is Japneet and this is our team of Niyamat, and we're so happy to have everyone here on board in this call where we are going to tackle, as my Zoom background says, insomnia. And
That's
yeah,
a
I'm
cute
so
background.
happy. Yeah. So it's really good to have you here, Japneet. Would you like to tell us a little more about yourself?
So, my name is Japneet Kaur. I am a licensed clinical psychologist practicing in Delhi, St. Stephen's Hospital. Along with that, I also have my private practice in NCR, Noida to be specific. And yeah, what else would you want to know?
I think that like tells us a lot about all your credentials, and definitely we're all very impressed, and we will definitely
We
yeah.
have actually taken out 5 minutes slot at the end of the session for fangirling, where Ananya and I are gonna giggle
That's
and
nice to
we're
know.
going to fangirl over you. Yeah, because we were just talking about you right before this call, and it's really inspiring what you do for people and how you are promoting mental health through your various social media platforms. It's really the need of the hour, and it feels good to know that there's people like you out there who are really putting, who are really putting their back into it and really giving back to society.
Thank you so much. This appreciation means a lot. There are not many people who do this. So, thank you for that.
But
All right,
it's
Nancy,
really
you want to start?
inspiring, like Megashri said.
Sorry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, before we even like start with the questions, Japneet, I want to ask you, do you think that, like, according to you, are you getting a full night of sleep? And what's your like sleep schedule like? Do you ever feel
I
face struggles with insomnia or any related sleep disorders?
Absolutely. I mean, I have always struggled with sleep. So, sleep happens to be one of those areas in my life that I've always had trouble in. However, I've worked a lot around my sleep hygiene. I've worked on my self care a lot in the recent years. As soon as I started to realize that if I don't do this, then it's going to affect how I am working. It's going to affect my efficiency with my clients. So I think because of that point, I realized that it is important to take care of my own self. And that is when I started working on my sleep. But pre-morbidly, sleep has always been an issue.
I definitely can relate with that, and I think a lot of us on call can
Ananya
also.
never
Yeah,
sleeps.
I think
Ananya never sleeps.
just.
Japneet, you have to tell her that she has to sleep more. She doesn't listen to me at all. So please, I hope you have significant takeaways from this session, Ananya.
I really hope so.
I definitely, yeah, I hope so as well. But yeah, just to get into the real meat and like just to get scientific with it, what is it that causes insomnia, and what would be the best way to treat it?
Uh, that's a very, very broad question, to be honest. So, insomnia could be an independent sleep disorder, or it could be a very significant feature of any other psychological disorder, right? So, to the point that when we're making a clinical diagnosis of depression, we actually query on the sleep quality, sleep quantity, how fresh the person feels when they wake up. So, that is how significant it is when we talk about depression or any other psychological disorder, be it psychosis, be it any other regular stress based disorders. Okay, so when we talk about insomnia, there are two, three characteristic features which would give you more clarity into it. First is it is not just whether you're able to have a good night's sleep or not. It is also the quantity. It is also how fresh you feel. And most significantly, it is the combination of all these three characteristics lasting for a period of at least 1 month, right? So if 3 times a week for a month, 1 month, you're continuously facing these issues, then we can say that you have insomnia. Then again, the question is whether it is just sleep difficulties or are there any other emotional triggers, emotional difficulties that you're facing, right? So this is what insomnia broadly is. Anything about insomnia that you would want to know? I'll get into the treatment part of it, but सिर्फ insomnia का अगर कुछ है तो anything that you would want to know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, I
so
have a question
yeah.
here. I have a question here. So, this has always been something I thought about, and as a kid, we're really reprimanded for not maintaining sleep times, and our parents insist we sleep on time and this and that, or we'll derail our habits and our health. So I want to know, do bad sleeping habits, can they cause an onset of insomnia? Is there something that you are doing wrong that can, like a lifestyle issue that can cause the onset?
Definitely, definitely. To the point that we have a sleep hygiene protocol that needs to be maintained. Even school of thoughts like DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, they have a protocol for nightmares. So that is, again, that is the kind of extent our routine, our lifestyle can affect our sleep. Our parents were very correct when they said that we need to have a fixed sleep routine, because that is the first thing that we take care of when we're initiating sleep hygiene. That you have a fixed time to wake up, you have a fixed time to go to bed. That stays constant even if you're not able to initiate sleep. You stay in your bed and you try to sleep. Then there are, of
Right.
course, more technical parts to it. Like if you're not able to sleep for a minimum of 15 minutes, don't stay in your bed. Get up, take a walk, restart the entire process, and then try to initiate sleep again. But these things that you mentioned are pretty much, a part of our hygiene program.
So also something you said in this very answer about not feeling fresh when you wake up in the morning. So I feel like it's true with a lot of people where even though they get a significant amount of sleep, even though they say sleep for 10 hours, they wake up feeling really tired, and this is always something that's brushed off as, oh, you've been looking into your phone at night, or you're watching scary movies so you have nightmares. Like there's always a justification around it, and it's not addressed as a real problem. So it often goes undiagnosed, untreated, and people struggle with these things. People really struggle with these things. So can you tell us more about, like, feeling fresh when you wake up, how that works, and how you can tell that this is an actual problem and not just not just a bad hangover maybe?
See, morning freshness is basically directly associated with the quality of sleep you've had. So, like I said, it is not just about the quantity of sleep. It is not just about the number of hours you've slept. It is also about how fresh. Like, sleep has a purpose, right? Sleep is supposed to make you feel rested, it's supposed to make your mind feel refreshed. If that doesn't happen, then it definitely means that there's something wrong with our sleep hygiene. Yeah. So if you wake up cranky, if you wake up feeling like you're not rested, if you wake up with a headache, if you wake up with nausea, all of these indicators are, it makes you feel that there's something wrong with the sleep quality that you're experiencing. And that definitely can be worked on. So the reason why we explore these things is primarily that we can work on these things. You have the opportunity to wake up early. You have the opportunity to wake up on time when you're feeling fresh. So if we work a little around certain things, all of these things are possible. That's why we try and explore them.
Does it also have to do with, like, the circadian rhythm? Is it important that we wake up between certain time frames to maintain sleep hygiene?
Definitely. So every person has a biological clock, right? That is why there are certain people who have a shorter biological cycle, and there are certain people who have a slightly longer. So that makes you a morning person or a night person. However, these cycles are also temporary. They can continuously change in our life according to the kind of routines we have, right? So people who've always woken up according to the standard timings, like waking up at 8 o'clock and then going back to sleep by around 11:30, 12, if they start doing a night shift, their biological clock does get settled eventually, right? But it takes time for sure.
Okay, yeah, that's actually something I didn't know, because we're always taught that early to bed, early to rise, and a lot of these things are overlooked very frequently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to know that, the how the timing of the day can actually impact your own sleep. This is something that my dad also wanted me to ask her because he knew we were having this session. So my dad, like most Indian dads or like just dads in general, falls asleep sharp at 9:30 or 10.
That's a dad thing, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes like when we have dinner, when we used to have dinner parties or like social gatherings, we used to get like so sleepy after a specific amount of time. New Year parties were hell for him. So he just yeah, he's curious about this. Can this also be a sleep disorder? Because otherwise he's a really punctual guy. He wakes up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, gets all his work done before any of us have woken up. But yeah, he just needs to sleep early. He just can't stay up past a certain amount of time. Is that also?
All about association. He's probably set his biological clock like that.
Hmm.
So when we're actually working on sleep hygiene, you're going to hear a lot of sleep hygiene, sleep hygiene, sleep hygiene, because that is how significant it is. So probably so I was saying that every time we work on sleep hygiene, we do try and fix a time for the person to wake up and sleep at, right? So that way we are training our mind that every time it's around 9:30, we would want to get to our bed and sleep. It's it's almost like learning to sleep at a fixed time, and unlearning will definitely take more time. So if you tend to sleep at 9:30 and you're suddenly expected to sleep at 11 o'clock, you're going to feel a little cranky, you're going to feel a little distressed about it. But then, like I said, our sleep cycles, our biological clocks can still change, but the transition is going to take some time. It has to be a smooth transition.
So
That's
what about people that have like erratic sleep times? Like Ananya and I were discussing just a little while ago that in engineering college there's no bedtime. Everyone's just walking around like a zombie for 4 years and nobody's getting any sleep. I'm sure you face it, and I'm sure it's the case with all kinds of students and all kinds of young people in their formative years when they need a lot of memory retention, when they need a lot of when they need to be quick witted and they need to be preparing and studying the whole time. We were on insane sleep schedules. We were sleeping like 4 hours a night, maybe 4 days a week. Like it was really crazy. So how does someone's body usually react when you're going to bed at a different time every night?
It takes time for the mind to understand when it's expected to sleep and when it's expected to be working, right? So like I said, if that transition period isn't too smooth, then it is going to affect you cognitively, emotionally, as well as behaviorally. Like you very appropriately said, that we were walking like zombies because we used to have that sort of a routine. Our attention concentration gets affected, our memory
Oh
gets,
yeah.
how comfortable we feel, how cranky, or how overall distressed we are. All of it is related to our sleep. So even when we are sleeping just for 3 to 4 hours, it's definitely going to affect how our mood is, right?
Mm. Yeah,
What
certainly.
kind of effect our sleep routine has. I mean, for people who have erratic sleep patterns, they have erratic behaviors and erratic mood swings as well. Then,
I feel so attacked. Yeah, this is also like
Even
a
for like
exactly.
the people who haven't maybe struggled with sleep disorders in the past, just because of the lockdown period and now because most people are working from home and a lot of people might even be working from their beds. So, like you mentioned with that transition period, it can be tricky to recognize because now it's like you utho and then just start working immediately.
Yeah,
And
there's no transition,
yeah.
psychologically. Like, pehle you're going to office and you sat down, you're getting prepared to work. Here's like you wake up and your laptop's sitting next to you. You're just like, aa jao, sab office aa jao. So is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing, Japneet? Are you going to discourage us from working on our beds?
Yes.
No, I can't.
This is precisely why a lot of people have started to have this concept where they get up, they get dressed, then they initiate their work, and then they get dressed back to their regular ghar ke kapde, right? Because our mind needs that. Our mind needs time to understand that right now it is expected to work, right now it is expected to rest, right? So again, when we talk about sleep hygiene, one of the most important things is that we have a transition period. Like I actually recommend, and this is something that has worked beautifully with all of my clients, that you give your mind a few steps prior to initiating sleep. Like you have your night routine, and it's so beautiful, it's so relaxing in all the other ways as well, not just for sleep, but it's such a nice cool down point. So you wash your face, you put some moisturizer, you listen to some music, you switch off your light, you switch on your lamp, then you set your bed, then you finally initiate sleep. So by the time you're on your first step, your mind has started to anticipate that, okay, the next step is going to be that she's going to put some moisturizer. The third step is going to be that she's going to switch off the light and switch on the lamp. That point onwards, your mind has already started to prepare itself ki, theek hai, by the time she reaches the seventh step, I have to be in the bed and I have to start initiating sleep. That in itself is a transition period for the mind. from a super active person to a super slow person who's just wanting to rest and relax and try and sleep. Yeah. So that is something which is very soothing, very relaxing for the mind as well.
That sounds
Uh,
beautiful. And I
Doesn't
can already like hear indie music in the background.
Yeah.
doesn't it
So
Why
already?
did
I'm
we
gonna
think
try
of this?
tonight.
Like, हमसे
Just
सोचा क्यों नहीं जा रहा है ये सब? Why don't we have these ideas, Ananya?
we
This
we'll
is actually
start
such a
today.
neat
We'll
trick,
start
yeah.
tonight.
This is such a neat trick. Like I can just by hearing what you're saying, I'm super convinced that this is going to work. Like there is no way that this doesn't work. I really do think that we need a winding down period right before we sleep, which is why the whole crash and burn theory is really bad, right? What happens is that people keep trying to push their hours and work longer hours, and whenever you have an extra piece of work, sleep is the first thing that takes a hit. Like as soon as you have to work an extra hour, you're like, okay, where can I take this time out of from? I have to eat food, I have to take a shower, what else can I compromise on? And sleep is always on that chopping board. So what is your general view about that? Do you think this is a big part of the problem, where people are just trying to be more productive, get more work, and just think that a good way to do that is to just sleep lesser?
Definitely. I mean, I remember even when we were younger, when we had to, learn and summarize and ratify all our concepts and then attempt an exam, we were still told by all our teachers and our parents that you should have a good night's sleep prior to an exam. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So कहीं ना कहीं it affects your efficiency as well. So if you're cutting down on sleep, then you're actually doing the contradictory to whatever you're supposed to be doing. You're cutting down on certain things so that you become more efficient. But if you're cutting down on your sleep, then your efficiency is anyway eventually going to get affected. It might not get affected immediately, like not within 3 to 4 days, but on your fifth day of not sleeping adequately, you're going to see the changes. Also, to add on to what we were discussing earlier, one of the most important things that we need to work on is not working on the bed. Our bed cannot be a workstation, right? So actually it is recommended that work should be done at any place other than your bed. It could be your sofa, it could be your couch, it could be your table chair, it could be someone else's bed as well, but your bed should be primarily for sleeping and a few more things that you would want to do there, but not working. Right?
That's pretty interesting that you can compartmentalize, a specific location.
Yeah, like
Honestly,
sacred space concept.
Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense because I know some people who straight up are complete night owls. मतलब सो ही नहीं पाते हैं at night, and they'll try to spend their time cooking or like they'll do the things that we do during the day, and then like they'll spend the entire day just sleeping. And when we were younger, like we would constantly hear these terms such as I like a morning person or a night person, and I like, are these things that are flexible in nature? Because now that I've started working, I'm seeing that people have different work schedules as well, right? Some people have like US clients and they have like these different, completely different work hours. So is it possible for, let's say, a morning person or someone like my dad to completely shift their like sleep routine based on, if they have like this foreign client that they have to stay up all night for? Is that something that's possible?
It is possible. It is very much possible. But like I said, the transition is going to be slightly exhausting. You can definitely change your internal clock, but it has to take a gradual, smooth process. It has to be in that pace. Um, a lot of times our internal clock changes automatically, like from the time when we're a teenager to the time when we become adults, our internal clock does change. Every time there's a big hormonal change happening, that is the time when your internal clock will change. Every time there's neurotransmitters changing to the point that you're hitting a depressive episode or you're hitting a psychotic episode, your sleep will get affected, and that is primarily because your internal clock is changing. So these changes are very much possible. Healthy or unhealthy is something that we need to look into. But it is definitely possible. Like I mentioned earlier, there are people who eventually start working in a night shift job and they're able to do that. It's not that they're extremely uncomfortable, but yeah, the initial few days or weeks are going to be like that. But it is very much possible for your dad to stay up till 12.
I will definitely convey that to him.
He will not be happy to hear that, Ananya. He will
Yeah.
not be happy to hear that.
I didn't say it.
No, so at this point, I think it's really imperative that I ask you this, because this is a concept that we really played fast and loose with in college and otherwise. So I want to talk about the concept of sleep bank before we jump into treatment and how to get better. So a lot of people do this thing where, before I do it myself, where before a long week, you try to get in more hours, you try to sleep in a little more, and you think that will kind of power you through the week. So to what degree is this true? Can you actually pre-sleep? Is that a thing?
You tell me, so when you do that, how do you feel during the week? Like, for example,
Usually when I'm doing that, I have so much work through the week that I've completely lost sense of feeling, and I'm just powering through it. So
I
I can't say if it works. I don't know. I mean, I definitely feel more refreshed for like a day or two, but then you need sleep. I guess you can't, you don't. ऐसा नहीं है कि you can sleep 10 hours one day and then say कल मैं 2 ही घंटे सोऊंगा and this will be fine. I
correct.
don't think that's the thing.
Correct, absolutely. So our when we're sleeping, we're actually giving our mind some rest, right? So you can't rest for 10 hours and then work out for one hour each, right? You cannot work for 10 hours in one go. You can't sleep 10 hours in one go and then sleep just for an hour every day. It's not, it might make you feel rested when you've slept for 10 hours straight, but all the other coming days when you're sleeping just for 1 hour, you're expected to feel utna hi lethargy, right? Also, there are theories that say that if you've slept for 10 to 11 hours, you're still going to feel exhausted because you're not supposed to sleep for 10 hours.
So is sleep also exhausting? Is it something that
Have you ever experienced that you've slept for a very long time and then you wake up with a very bad buzzing headache? Have you experienced that? Have you
so I
also
don't sleep
have
a
you had
lot
the
actually. So like
opportunity of sleeping for 10 hours straight?
no, I think I haven't slept. I don't think I've ever slept longer than 8 or 9 hours. Like in my general, that's why that actually ties in very beautifully with what we wanted to ask tonight. That's why I actually got a sleep tracker, because I wanted to see how much I was sleeping, because I wasn't convinced. I couldn't understand if I wasn't sleeping enough or if I'm just sleeping shorter hours and that's just how it works on my body. So I average on about 6.5 hours of sleep, and I have plenty of time. It's not that I can't sleep more, that's just the amount of sleep. So we were talking about the 8 hour myth, that if you had, do you have to sleep 8 hours? Is it strictly 8 hours for everyone, or is it like a bit of a floating, एक दो घंटा ऊपर नीचे चलेगा type of system here?
Going to be different for different people. It cannot be the, like I said, our internal clock cannot be absolutely same for every person. There are people who sleep for 5 hours and feel absolutely fresh, and there are people who feel fresh after getting a minimum of 8 hours sleep. So it's not exactly same for every person. And that is absolutely normal. It's absolutely all right if you don't feel fresh after a particular number of hours. Maybe for you, sleep is more important, and the number of hours that your mind takes to get refreshed is different, and that is okay.
Is that a common thing though? Do you see that is there a trend of any sort where, increasingly people are trying to adapt to lesser sleep or such?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, see, especially in the coming times, in the recent times, we've seen that corporate culture has started to put more work requirements on employees, right? People, since everyone's working from home, people are working remotely, they're expected to give more hours of productivity, but then they are compromising on their sleep. And it is now that the employees and big companies are realizing that we can't pressurize the employees like that. So now that we've been in the pandemic since the last 1 year, it is now that people are able to retrospectively understand whether the efficiency has increased or not. And the employees which were working continuously without getting adequate sleep at odd hours were found to be inefficient, right? So you need to take care of, there has to be some bracket that we're taking care of. It cannot be same for all of us, But ye 5 to 8 hours wala funda is there. That sort of a bracket is there for all of us. Did I
So
answer the question?
yes, yes, you did. So also just one more thing before we jump into solutions. So there's in the lockdown, I think it's become really apparent that there's a difference between physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion. Like, you still feel really tired at the end of every day, even if you're just sitting at home and doing nothing. So is that something that our mind gets tuned to? Like in college, we were getting really physically exhausted, right? We were walking around a lot, doing really, or in office as well, you get really physically exhausted, traveling and doing things and talking to people. So can your body take that kind of shift where suddenly you're more mentally exhausted but you're not as physically exhausted? Because like my mother can't sleep if she doesn't exercise. She has a lot of trouble sleeping if she can't exercise, and her body doesn't seem to be able to tune with anything else. Like she needs that much physical, that much physical activity to be able to sleep. So is that something that gets tuned as per your circumstance, or is it just you get what you get and you have to work with it?
See, usually it is recommended that we have some sort of physical exercise so that we're able to sleep well. The concept here is that you're tired, so to tire you out, to make you feel a little more exerted and exhausted, it is recommended that you incorporate physical exercise in your routine if you're having difficulties at night. Now, you very correctly said that there is physical exertion and there is mental exertion, right? We also do promote mental gym, which is known as brain gym, for your mind to get tired. So, engaging in activities which are cognitively stimulating, right? So, it could be anything. It could be games like Sudoku. It could be activities like multiplying different digits. It could be any other activity that you're doing cognitively, so that you get to the point where you're mentally tired if your routine is such that you're not getting mentally stimulated, right? But the precaution here is that we shouldn't be doing cognitively stimulating activities just prior to our sleep time, right? So that adds on to what we discussed earlier, that there should be a smooth transition. So if you're working late at night till say 8:30 and then you're wanting to sleep at 9 o'clock, it's not going to happen. So you need to have some sort of time space wherein you're done with your work and you're preparing yourself to sleep. You can't switch off your laptop at 9 o'clock and expect to sleep by 9:15. It cannot happen. A lot of times when we have clients with depressive symptoms, antidepressants are prescribed to them. We're doing our regular CBT, we're doing everything that is required. If the client still finds it difficult to initiate sleep, physical activity is the key to it. You add physical activity and their depressive symptoms get better, their gets better. All of these changes begin to happen then. So again, physical activity is super important. It could be anything, any sort of activity, but some sort of physical exertion.
That's so interesting that you need to have your brain and your body in sync, because a lot of times your brain can be completely exhausted after working those many hours, but if you haven't had like adequate physical exhaustion, then you won't be able to sleep. And yeah, I definitely have faced this, and I know quite a few people who would benefit from this. So yeah, that's super helpful. And also for the previous trip that you pointed out on having a night care routine, because I know that, especially with our generation, we are all scrolling through Instagram as we fall asleep. So it's definitely required to have some systems in place. But yeah, I was curious about a lot of people who have, once they've accepted that, okay, I might have a problem, or like some sleep related issue where I'm not able to give my body the sleep it requires. Once they've accepted that, they directly want to jump into like getting sleeping pills, or like just treating it directly with medicines. Is that recommended, or are there any other alternative treatments that are less intense but can be equally effective?
See, sleeping pills are definitely effective. Some of them are even addictive in nature. Some of them help in creating melatonin, which is the natural substance required for you to be able to sleep. However, I personally feel that sleeping pills should be your last resort. Yeah, if there are things that you can change, things that you can incorporate in your routine without incorporating sleeping pills, you can still sleep. However, if it is happening at a purely biological level, that means that you've worked on everything, and insomnia in itself is the only thing that you're struggling with, then sleeping pills is the only option we have. How, for most of the people, when insomnia is not purely biological, there are so many other things that are going to work for them, and they have recovered pretty well. So sleeping pills should be the last resort, according to me.
So is it like they should wait for a formal diagnosis of insomnia before and consult with a psychologist or a psychiatrist before actually resorting to getting sleeping
Yes. So, like I had mentioned earlier, insomnia can be an independent diagnosis, or it could be a feature of any other psychological disorder, right? If it is a feature of any other psychological disorder, then there are higher probabilities of it getting better when all the other areas are resolved. So they need not start any sort of medication just for insomnia in those situations. However, if insomnia in itself is a disorder, then again we start with our basic sleep protocol. Do our sleep hygiene protocol, and then we see if they're getting better or not. If not, then we will definitely have to put them on medication. For that, they will have to consult a psychiatrist.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the less intrusive methods, like you spoke about having a night routine and such? So, with degrees of severity, could you tell us more about what are the less intrusive methods that are used?
Would you be comfortable if I share a picture of our basic sleep hygiene? That is one tool
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yes.
that is something that I share very frequently with my clients, and it has worked with them. So, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes, we are.
So, this is the basic sleep hygiene we follow. It is a very cute summary of all the tricks that we recommend. One, as I mentioned, that you wake up and you initiate sleep at the same time, right? We've also spoken about the second one, that if you're not able to sleep, then don't stay in bed calculating the number of hours you're going to get now. Yeah, so you take a walk, have a glass of water, use the washroom, then try and initiate sleep again. It is also recommended that your bedroom should be very quiet, very relaxing. Now, there are certain people who are not comfortable in it being completely dark. So, whatever works for you, right? The fourth point is something that is very commonly recommended, that you should not be using any sort of electronic devices or gadgets at least 40 to 45 minutes prior to your sleep time. So if you plan to sleep by around 9, 8:15 should be the time जब आप टाटा बाय बाय कर दो अपने gadgets को. So you switch them off and you keep them aside. Like I said, bed should be primarily for sleeping and other pleasant activities that you would want to do that cannot happen anywhere else than bed. So, sex happens to be one of them. So, sleep and sex are the two things that you do in bed. For all the other activities, you need to find replacements. These replacements could still be other people's bed, right? But not your bed, because your mind needs to learn that this bed is for sleep. So, that sort of a memory association has to be created. Physical exercise, like we've spoken about it, plays a very important role. A lot of times, so sleep diary is something that I personally did not find it to be very effective, but it is recommended that if you're unable to sleep, then you start writing a diary, write about all the things that are that are going on in your mind, all the things that you would want to work on when you wake up. It has a CBT component attached to it. So next day when you wake up in the morning, try and figure out what all was going on in your mind and try to find some sort of resolution to it, right? The eighth point is related to our fourth one. So you limit your exposure to bright light. Yeah, bedtime routine is something that we spoke of. My personal favorite bedtime routine happens to be the one that I discussed earlier, that you have at least 4 to 5 steps to your sleep initiation. It is also recommended that you shouldn't be too hungry or too heavy when you're about to, during your late night hours when you want to sleep. Your water intake shouldn't be too much. You should not be consuming a lot of alcohol, nicotine, all of these substances. So this happens to be the basic sleep hygiene. All of it would depend on what are the reasons why a particular person is not able to sleep. A lot of times when people have had a few nights of terrible sleep, they feel scared of going back to bed, right? So if that sort of an anxiety is there, then we need to approach it in a therapeutic manner. Similarly, if there are nightmares and that is why the person is not able to sleep, or they don't feel like initiating sleep because they know that they're going to have nightmares, then there are other ways to deal with those nightmares, right? So there's another protocol which comes in dialectical behavior therapy, which primarily takes care of your nightmares. So we can do that. So this is what I work a lot with patients who have sleep difficulties, and sleep hygiene is something that if we follow these 13, 14 tips strictly, it is definitely going to help people, and the possibility of them requiring medication goes down drastically.
Thank you so much for this, Japneet. I mean, this is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just wondering, can these rules also be applied to people who might have issues with sleep talking or sleepwalking? There are people who sleep study sometimes.
Yeah, that's Ananya. That's Ananya. She's talking about herself.
How do you sleep study? I'm curious to know that.
Whoa, she wakes up in the morning at 3 and she'll be like, now I'll solve chemistry problems. She
Wow.
does all kind. She does sleep keyboard playing also. She'll wake up in the middle of the night. She starts playing a keyboard.
Please feel free to reach out to me for this. I would want to
Yeah,
approach it in a very different manner then.
yeah. You'll become the subject of a study, Ananya. I think by the end of this, Japneet is really intrigued by what is happening. So I know that we can't really get into it because it must be a really detailed topic. But I find that sometimes when my dreams are very vivid, not just nightmares, but in general, when my dreams are very vivid, I have a certain, I feel more exhausted when I wake up. I feel like my brain was engaged in a very active exchange and I wasn't able to kind of turn it off, right? So, is that really something that happens to people? And B, is it something that can only be dealt with in depth, or is there something simple that you could be doing wrong?
First is the content of your dreams. Right? Is the content in itself distressing for you? Is the content in itself making you feel restless and anxious during the night time, and you're not able to, like you said, get up? You're not able to break your sleep, so it continues to bother you, and it leaves you with a sensation of being tired, sensation of being, having some sort of body ache, some sort of pain in your body. If it is that, then like I said, we'll have to approach nightmares in a very different manner, right? uh, the kind of concerns you just discussed primarily happen when there are other psychological components to the situation that need to be addressed in depth. However, I think shortcut method won't work in this situation. I don't think it would, because even if it works, it's going to work in a very temporary manner. If such problems are happening consistently, then consistent solution is required. Yeah. So we can try doing all of those 13, 14 things that we discussed right now, which are a part of our sleep hygiene protocol. However, if it continues to be an issue, if your quality of your sleep continues to be an issue, then you would have to approach it in a depth, with depth.
So while we're on the side of solutions, we also see a lot of very techie things that have come into the market. You know, the sleep pillows, there's white noise machines, and there's all kinds of aids. You know, to not just to make you more aware of the quality of your sleep, but also to improve it. So, what's your take on that? Do people come to you with queries that I just bought a hot new pillow? Is this going to change my life or not, Japni?
I've actually never seen any client coming with that sort of a question, to be very honest. I do feel that there are certain aids which can help you, but I don't know. I mean, I personally feel that if there's an issue, then you need to work on it, right? It's almost like I'm not able to sleep. Let me just take a sleeping pill and go off to sleep. So it's like that. If you feel that that seems to be working for you, then great. But there are a lot of times when it works, but it works temporarily. So if you get a machine, or if you get some sort of pillow, some sort of mattress, you get some sort of a blanket, it might work for a very temporary period, and then you start facing those difficulties again, because it is happening at a psychological level. Insomnia specifically, like I said, it usually is a part of something else that is happening. So you might be in the best room, best mattress, best pillow, you might have the best blanket. However, you would still continue to feel discomfort, and you would still continue to have some difficulties in sleeping. If that is the case, then definitely there are things that are bothering, and we need to sort of explore them, right? However, there are people who have responded positively. They've been able to improve their sleep via these mechanisms. If it happens, great. But if it does not happen, then you definitely need to seek help.
So do people, does it turn into a dependence sometimes? Do people feel like it's
No.
habit forming, like you can't sleep without a white noise machine, or you can't sleep without an
Usually
aid?
it doesn't happen. More than white noise machines or all the other things you mentioned, there's a trend of different applications that people have started to use, like Calm, Headspace, all of these apps.
Right.
People do feel that it becomes difficult for them to not initiate sleep without listening to an audio, on Headspace. I don't feel that it is addictive in nature. It is just that they've found one escape, one solution that seems to work for them. So once you leave it, you are where you were initially, right? You weren't able to sleep, and you were able to sleep when you started using these mechanisms. And when you're trying to stop using them, you get back to where you were. So pre-morbidly, primarily, the problem sleep ka hi tha na. You used
Right.
something that worked for you. You stop using it, you have those problems again. So it is not addictive in nature. Medication, definitely, there are sleeping pills which can be addictive, but they need to be taken with consent of your psychiatrist. And every time there are n number of medication that people take on their own, so they have to get in touch with the doctor and see if that sort of a medication is going to work for them. But all the other things which are not orally or taken in any other way, they cannot be addictive. These apps or these tools cannot be addictive. Does
Yeah, I
that
Right.
think
answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm really happy to know that these are not habit forming things. I guess I'm really scared of trying anything that I might create a dependence on, in terms of sleep. And yeah, it's good to know that you can try a bunch of things and see what works for you.
What
Yes,
happens if you do develop a dependence?
I'm not sure. Then okay. I I have this kind of weird anxious knack that then in a situation where I don't have that resource at hand, like if in a situation I'm somewhere, my phone dies out, there's no way for me to have white noise, or there's no way for me to do anything else. I feel like I'll start to scramble for sleep. Like, but I think that's more of a personal issue and not one widely shared by the audience. So yeah, I think that's gonna need some more working on.
Yeah. So I think it all comes back to the point that how were you sleeping prior to your usage?
Right,
Is
right.
it something that you're using it just to enhance your quality or experiment, or you would want to try it out, or is it something that you're looking at as a solution? If you're looking at it as a solution, then I don't think the efficiency of it is going to be superb. It might help you slightly, like it might help your sleep at least 10 to 15%, but then that is it. you know that is the kind of improvement you'll have.
yeah.
Hans, you were saying something?
Yeah, I think I love that you mentioned, the usage of all these apps, and it's true. I mean, I think we're past the age where, like, like no one's reading real books anymore, and it's just, if we're going to resort to our cell phones and our, our like desktops and everything all the time, it's good. I think there might, as long as you can keep your any like a potential addictions in control, I think the usage of mental health apps can definitely be very, very beneficial. So we'll definitely be linking some of those references to those apps in the podcast. And yeah, let's transition to our rapid fire myths versus facts section. So in this section, we will mainly just be targeting a couple of myths relating to insomnia. And Japneet, we're just going to ask for your help to debunk these myths. All right. So, are we ready to be mythbusters for the next 10 minutes or so?
Let's get started.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, myth number one, insomnia is solely not being able to sleep. Is that true to some extent?
No, it's not true. Insomnia is actually when you have difficulty in initiation of sleep, maintaining sleep, quality of sleep, and waking up fresh.
Wow, that was rapid. I'm impressed. Okay, myth number two, insomnia is all in your head. The classic mental illness trope.
If insomnia was all in your head, then there wouldn't be any sleeping pills or medication for it, which means that that's not true.
That's amazing. Sleep myth number three, if you can't wake up without an alarm clock, you aren't getting enough sleep.
That's again not true. You can have your internal biological cycle working in weird ways. You need to understand whether you're waking up tired or whether you're waking up fresh or whether there's some sort of other conflict going on.
Wow, yeah, that's really insightful. I actually didn't think about it that way.
I can't hear you.
Oh, is it? Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Next myth, napping helps offset insomnia.
That's again not true. Napping actually spoils your quality of sleep at night. It is recommended that you don't take daytime naps and try and initiate sleep at one fixed time.
All right. The next one is something we've already covered, but just to quickly wrap it up, watching TV helps with insomnia.
It doesn't. It worsens your insomnia, especially if it happens in the evening hours.
All right. The next myth, which I wish was true, but it's not, alcohol helps you fall asleep.
No. No, Japneet, don't tell us no.
Might help you temporarily, but that happens temporarily only. It can often become a way of coping with sleep disturbances, but in the long run, it can definitely disturb your sleep quality.
You're doing great, Japneet, about on this, by the way. And
Yeah, we should have a
final myth,
coffee hamper here for Japneet.
yes,
I would love that.
very appropriate for an insomnia session. And the final myth, insomnia is difficult to treat.
Insomnia can be difficult to treat. However, it is treatable for sure. It is very common. It is treatable. You just need to understand why it's happening and then figure out a solution for it. It is taxing, and that is why it seems difficult to treat. No one likes to have a disturbed night's sleep. So it is difficult to experience. It is difficult to figure out why exactly it's happening, but it is very much treatable. Not so rapid, but yes.
Yeah, that was it by with our myths versus facts rapid fire session. Japneet, you did this. You have won all the insomnia related hampers there are. And yeah, my mind is blown. I mean, this is just such valuable information. And I think the real takeaway is that, if we just are a little more mindful about our sleep patterns, because they end up affecting so everything else in our lives. Yeah, so I think as long as we're more mindful and we take care of ourselves, especially now, well, you should always take care of yourself, but now more than ever. And yeah, that's just the key to getting a more fulfilled and satisfactory life. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Japneet. We can now get all of our
Go to the
fangirling.
fangirling round. No, but I also want to highlight something that you said as a part of many of your answers, that there is no shortcut. If you have to train your mind to do something, you have to take the long way in, and you have to. It is a part of basic self care. And we also have a silent member in the audience who's had his own struggles with sleep. So Tanu, do you have any questions before we bring this to a close?
Hi, Meenakshi. Yes, I do have a question actually. So, Japneet, I have personally seen that if even if I sleep for 8 hours, let's say on an average, I still don't wake up fresh. I feel tired and not relaxed mentally. So, is there any thing you can recommend for that?
Have you tried sleeping for less number of hours?
I actually haven't. I don't think that I can actually function. I need a lot of sleep actually. I
Hmm.
don't think I can function on less number of hours.
Okay, so maybe what you can try doing is that you wake up after 5 to 6 hours of sleep, do something, and then continue sleeping again. So
I have
you,
actually seen that
hmm,
when I wake up, let's say at 4 or 5, and I sleep again after an, I have a better sleep, and I feel that the second part is the best part of the sleep, the
yeah.
second. So like
So do
how,
you feel fresher when you wake up after having your second part of sleep?
yes, I do.
So that sort of a equation would work for you. So what is recommended in your situation and seems to be working for you is that you sleep for 5 hours, take a break for half an hour, like set an alarm, wake up after say 5 hours of sleep, do some sort of activity. Again, it could be as small as taking a shower and then changing your clothes, and then try and initiate sleep again. So by around 5, if you're planning to get up at 5 o'clock, you do something for 15-20 minutes and then you try and sleep again by say 5:30, and then continue with whatever the remaining number of hours is, and then wake up. I am sure that you're going to feel fresher after your second nap.
So one thing that you mentioned, waking up by an alarm. Do you think is it good that I sleep wake up after 5 hours on an alarm? Because I've read that waking up by an alarm is not good for you. So is that something that you
We all
recommend?
wake up by alarms only. I mean, either it's a mama ka alarm or our phone ka alarm. Who wake up by alarms? Who wakes
Fair
up
enough.
on their own?
But is
Well,
it a bad thing? Is it disruptive in general? If you force, if you choose to wake up by say a phone alarm, like a really loud noise or such, is it disruptive, or are there better ways or worse ways to be waking up by an alarm? Or is it all the same?
What could be a better way? What better ways can you think of?
So, for example, a lot of watches and fitness trackers these days have these programs where they wake you up between a certain time period, and they wake you up more gently than an alarm would. Like they wake you up by vibration, by feeling a vibration on your wrist. And to me, I find that I'm a lot less grumpy when I'm woken up that way, as opposed to like a really loud phone ka alarm. I haven't used my phone ka alarm in many, many years at all. So yeah, is there a better or a worse, or is it all pretty much the same?
I personally don't feel that there's a lot of difference. The point here is that there's an external aid to wake you up, right? Like I said, it could be your mom screaming at you, it could be a gentle nudge on your whatever bands you're using or your phones, or it could be a loud alarm, it could be an alarm that starts on a very small or very very quiet note and then eventually becomes louder. So the point is that all of these are still external stimuli. It's not happening naturally, organically. If you're able to wake up at 5 o'clock organically, great. Like what could be better than that? Probably Ananya's father would be able to do that, but none of us are able to do it, right? We're not able to wake up organically at the desired time. It has to happen via an external aid. So in Tanud's situation where he feels that taking break in between one whole nap is going to help him, and it has helped him earlier, then I don't think there's any harm in waking up using an alarm clock. A lot of people find their own ways to go about it. Like you say that alarm clocks don't work for you. I say that I cannot wake up until unless I hear a loud noise that literally pushes me to get up. So every person has their own way and comfort around it. You can definitely try out a few options, see what works for you, and then start using that more regularly. As long as it's happening at an external level, the stimuli is external, you get to decide what works for you. The advantage of it is that it's external, so you get to control what happens, right? It's so much better than having an internal something to wake you up. Imagine waking up on a regular basis with a bad dream. That's much more difficult to manage.
Mm, it is. It is. Yeah, that's also like a part of the myth debunking here, I guess. Then that's a big takeaway. But yeah, from this entire session, Japneet, I think we've realized that it's a lot more important than you think. Your sleep is a lot more important than you think. Even in the research phase for this very call, Ananya and I went back and we read some excerpts from Why We Sleep. and we were horrified because we were not meeting any of the criteria for sleep defined in there. And it's not something that people have really started talking about until now. Earlier, it was seen as a sign of a very productive person to be sleeping just 4 hours or 5 hours, never really looked upon as a problem. And there's always like, oh, you're just probably a light sleeper, or maybe that's just it. But yeah, a lot needs to go into people improving the quality of their sleep, because it heavily affects their cognitive abilities, especially where they're in sensitive key functions at work, where you're doing something really important, where the error margins are small, say you're in medicine or otherwise. So the session was really, really great, Japneet. There are so many people that are so grateful for the work that you do, and honestly, it's inspirational. It's like you're a superhero, literally, and we can't thank you enough for what you're doing for society and for helping us here, talking about these issues, creating awareness. So thank you so much for being here, Japneet.
Thank you for having me over. Sleep, I feel, is one of the most underrated concepts in our life. It is so important. It has so many layers to it. It could be an indicator of so many things, but we tend to not take them seriously. We tend to take our sleep as just something that we all naturally do. So I always tell my clients that if you're sleeping well naturally, consider it to be a blessing, because I have personally struggled a lot with sleep. So if that doesn't happen to be an issue for you, great.
Really, really valuable lessons there. Thank you so much, Japneet. And thank you, everyone on the call. It's really, really valuable to explore all of these mental health issues along with all of you. And yeah, I'm hoping that everyone stays safe, stays healthy, and yeah, sleep well tonight, everyone. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the call. Take care and have a great day ahead.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Japneet. Thank you, Ananya.